Jim, you have to live in the present. That's how you become happy, dude. Try that. Try that for a whole year. Just keep living everyday present. Let me see if you go broke. Let me see if you get depressed. Let me see if you actually go the way you want to by only looking at the present every day.
And I love your energy off the start.
Oh.
I feel like you're early in the morning, but you're coming at it with a lot of energy. I love that.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Where are you calling from?
I'm in New York.
Oh,
How about
nice.
yourself?
I just moved down from Jersey to Florida.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
I got here Christmas Day.
Oh, nice. I would
Yeah.
say it's probably warmer there, but you guys have had the first snow in, I think, forever, which is crazy.
Yeah, I mean that's way north. I'm good where I'm at.
Oh, good.
Yeah, yep. So everything's good. I just want to make sure
Good. I
all my
love that.
settings are good.
Yeah, no, we're good. We're good to go.
Okay.
I love, again, I want to start by just saying how much I love your energy and kind of the passion you're bringing to it.
Yeah.
Where does that come from? Where's that energy for you? Where's that come from?
Oh, I don't know. It's just been a natural thing for me to do since I don't know. People have always told me like, dude, he's always smiling. Like I'm like, I don't know, and I really don't know. It's like it's been just a thing that I'm always just kind of see good things. I guess. I mean, it's not like I don't have bad days, but it's pretty
Right.
easy for me. I don't know. I don't know what it is.
That's good though. So let's take a step back a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I know mental health is a super important thing for you personally.
Yeah.
And to me, I think that those are pretty closely related. Your outlook on life, how much joy you bring to it, gratitude, I think all that helps to play into having a positive outlook and your mental health overall.
Yeah.
What is your background there? Like, how did you get into that? Give me a little bit of a backstory into why mental health is so important for you specifically.
Yeah, yes. So it actually started off. I still do. I have a clothing line that's more inspirational, motivational. So every time I would talk to people, anything inspirational, motivational, always ends up going towards mental health. And along the way, people would bring up their stories. Oh, yeah, I was having a bad day, and obviously suicidal tendencies comes up. I have my experience with suicide and losing my brother. So obviously, I tell my experience and then give them my insights on like what helped me or how they can be better. And every time, they left feeling better. And I'm just like, I didn't want to talk about my brother because I'm like, dude, I'm not going to exploit and make you feel bad and then buy stuff.
Right.
So I never wanted to talk about it. But I'm just like, yeah, but it makes them feel better. I'm like, I'm going to talk about it more. And then the more and more I talk about it, I started learning and learning because I just keep talking. I listen. And what I've learned is everything's being done wrong in the mental health space anyway. And I'm going, what? Because when I would explain what I was doing, because they're like, oh, do you, with the clothing line, they're like, oh, do you support a nonprofit? I'm like, no, we're just inspirational because you need a reminder. And I said that, we're actually like, I guess you can consider us the front lines, like that's when you're already pretty far down. And they couldn't understand really what I meant. So I'm like, man, and then I got deeper and deeper into it. And then that's when I started a nonprofit foundation for mental health and suicide prevention to separate the two because I didn't want it to be a suicidal type. It's more inspiration, and people can't seem to grasp when it's suicide prevention and inspiration into one. Like you see all suicide events, it's like depressing. I mean, you never go to a suicide prevention with inspiration. Suicide prevention is always like, I'm gonna leave pretty sad, aren't I? The walks, this, like I get it's full, it feels good for people that experienced it or whatever, or contributing to it. But I don't think we're doing things correctly. So that's when I really started diving more into like, what? I think I need to do something a little deeper. So that's when we came up
Yeah,
with Start Day One.
I love that. And the question that I have, which kind of really just came to mind when you were describing that, is are we doing suicide prevention wrong? And what I mean by that is like, the answer is probably yes, right? Because we can always do a better job. But my thought process here is, are we looking at it like, is the focus on people who are currently suicidal, who are at the edge, right?
Mhm.
physically or mentally, should we maybe zoom out a little bit and help, right? If we have a good mental health before we even get remotely close to that, should we help them so that's not even a thought,
Right.
right? So is suicide prevention something that we shouldn't be looking at the person who's in their last hours, but like let's look at the person who's even weeks, months, years before they get to that spot? Should we let's try that word in English. Should we be doing a better preventative job of even getting to that phase?
Well, that's the thing, right? No one is doing suicide prevention. They're doing suicide reaction. The best way, I try to use metaphors as much as I can so your listeners can really understand. Now, when it comes to obesity, do you think it's better to weigh 500 pounds? Or do you start kind of working out now? When you gain 5 pounds, 10 pounds, should we wait? Like, Jim, you're not 500 pounds yet. You're like 450. Call me when you're 499, but 500 is really when you should call me. But don't call me yet, okay? Does that make sense? Because prevention requires proactivity, right? It's impossible to prevent any problem, whether it's your business, personal life, any problem whatsoever. It's impossible to prevent without being proactive about it. The best thing about being proactive is not only great for prevention, it's awesome for prediction. I know that if you are gaining weight and you started working out consistently, just taking a walk and going, I know that you're most likely going to lose some weight. Well, same thing with the mental health, right? If I tell a kid that he's a loser and he's not going to make it from 5 years old to 18 when he leaves the house, pretty sure we're going to have some issues, right? So there need to be some kind of proactivity involved, because for people that can't understand what I'm saying, if you want to challenge me on this, I need you to prevent cavities, but don't proactively brush your teeth. I want to see what happens. I want you to prevent diabetes, but don't proactively tell your kids to stop eating all the sugar during Halloween. Just let them eat all the sugar they want. And I want to see if you can prevent it. It's impossible. You have to be proactive to prevent. That's what prevention means. So what everyone is doing is being more reactive. The problem we're having today, so that's one, being proactive. Number two, it doesn't matter if you remedy the result when the cause is still there. So you have to look at the cause, not just the result. So I know there's a lot of good things that we're doing for mental health, like, yoga, ice baths, all these things, right? I get it. But if you haven't forgiven your dad, that's a lot of yoga to do. There's a lot of hiking and all these remedies for the result. But that's all that is. It's not the cause, right? So that's number two. And number three, we've made it even worse because you have doctors, organizations, entire society saying that the result is actually the cause. What? My bankruptcy caused me to lose my money. Wait, what? The result is the. I don't get it. Oh man, my diabetes is really fluctuating my sugar today. Like, wait, what? So it doesn't make any sense. So I kind of reverse engineered everything, right? We're a product of our decisions. It's really our perspectives that drive our decisions. That's how we end up into these different things. And so what I've realized is that people have these perspectives that influences their thought patterns and all that stuff, right? So that now you get depressed. Well, now you're in depression. But the way they tell you is you have depression. Oh man, Jim, you're going to be depressed. Now you're going to have negative perspectives. That doesn't make any sense. It's this never ending loop that you're never going to fix.
Mm. It's very true. And I think that far too often we wait until it's nearly too late to start having that conversation where people don't think, could they be doing something now where someone is quote unquote not suicidal?
Yeah. Well,
start figuring that out. And
that's the
I think
best
too,
time.
we don't have that conversation, which I'm glad we're having this one.
Yeah.
Suicidal, let's take a step back and really define what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think for most people who are not personally familiar with it, they imagine it as the dude who climbs up on a bridge and jumps off.
Mm-hmm.
Could it also be when you're in a really rough mental spot and you're feeling just totally depleted and you're driving home from work and you say, man, what would happen if I just let go of the steering wheel and I happened to hit a car and I wound up in the hospital? Would people feel bad for me?
Hmm.
Would I get some sympathy? Would I get a day off? Would I be able to escape this situation?
Right.
Right? Are those related?
No, definitely. There's So suicidal tendencies, I believe that there's like one cause, right? It all stems from your mindset. A lot of the things that we say is like we're always blaming the past or something, and it's not that. The cause is always a verb, and it's currently happening. It's not something that happened. If it happened, then or if it's something that's not happening now, then it's past tense. That means it's no longer a problem, right? So what is happening?
Right.
The trauma is not the problem. The job that you hate is not the problem. It's what is going on with you, because anyone would probably love the job that you have if they don't have one. But you seem to take it for granted and say like, "Oh, I hate this job," and really, it's all comes down to your mindset. Like, why don't you just quit? I don't get it. Like, why are you going miserable? Why are you staying with a girlfriend that you hate or a relationship that's just so bad for you? Um, so you really need to understand that the cause is still a verb, because when you start blaming your dad from the past, your job, those are all nouns, nouns, nouns. That doesn't do anything. What is happening in your mind currently? What is the thought pattern? Typically, obviously, is what are you thinking, or how are you thinking is actually the better thing. And so when people do those, the thoughts that you were talking about, like, why are you having those thoughts? What's going on? Like, why are you doing that? Because it's not because you have depression. Now you have those thoughts. You have those thoughts. That's why you're in depression. Like, you have to figure that out. Change your thought patterns. What are you
Right.
focusing on? And the problem really is that we're being taught the wrong things. So it actually amplifies it. It's the nocebo effect, right? There's the placebo effect of saying, like, hey, when you think positively, things seem to be brighter, right? Well, it also works the other way. When doctors tell you with white coats and they say, Jim, you have depression. I've got some pills for you. It's the only way to do it. Well, You're not you're not going to question some guy in a white freaking coat that has a PhD in this. But again, they're professionals at suicide reaction, not prevention. When the hell's the last time
Hmm.
you went to your doctor and said, like, hey, what's the best diet to prevent diabetes that I should be really doing? Like, what's my workout routine? You don't go to a doctor for that, right? The doctors are there when you have diabetes. Doctors are there when you're already beyond the point that you can prevent, because that's not prevent. You didn't prevent it. So everything I discuss is all about prevention. So when you have these thought patterns, like, you have to figure out, like, what's the verb? What is the cause? What is happening? Because you really have to figure that out. And typically you have to keep asking why. I relate a lot of things with startups. When you try and figure out the problems, you have to ask, why did this happen? Well, you have to go down the line, because if you fix the result, well, that doesn't really matter, because the cause is still there. So
Right.
people really need to understand that no one is immune to suicidal tendencies. They, it's kind of like no one's immune to obesity. But guess what? How come who doesn't know? Hey, Jim, I want to ask you, how do you, I don't know, stay healthy? How do you stay healthy? What do you have to do? You have to diet and exercise, right? Who doesn't know
Right.
this? How come I still see obese people? Who doesn't know this? Same thing with mental health. Everyone knows what to do. I can read off motivational quotes for you, and all you're going to say, like, that's true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. There's not one you're going to be like, life is short. That's why I feel this way. I didn't know life was short. I mean, I'm talking every motivational quote. But what it does sometimes, what it's really more inspiration, not really motivation. It shifts your perspectives. That's the most important thing. If you look at every guru, every person that you know that made that decision to change, what what did they do? Magic pill? A special freaking alien came down? I don't know. But really, what had happened was a shift in perspective. That's it. That's all that really shifts. And that's what we need to focus on. Because once you shift the perspective and it's constantly going back and forth, everyone does it. All the gurus that you think are positive, dude, Don't tell me they'll never have a negative experience, because that's what they try to portray, but that's impossible. That's not life. When you're trying to prevent those feelings, that's crazy. When people are in depression, I tell them, good, you're almost there, because you have to embrace the pain for you to appreciate the pleasure, you know? So,
Yeah. So let's, if we can, what I want to do is I want to do a little bit of a collaborative effort to solve this. Okay.
yeah.
Obviously, you and I together in this, we're not going to solve it entirely. I don't believe. There's a lot of work to do. Okay. But we are going to at least give one person listening to this right now a little bit of a different perspective. So I want to go through that scenario because, like I said before, there was a time in my past personally. I'll
Mhm.
speak from personal experience.
Mhm.
I've had that thought, right? You're driving, you're like, man, life is so stressful. If I just turn left right now, crash my car, I'll wind up in the hospital, I'll get a break from all the stress.
Yeah.
And, thank God I never did that.
All right. Of
But
course.
I want to just admit, first of all, for me, hey, I've had that thought. Okay, so let's personalize it. I've been there.
Mhm.
It's not common, I believe, for most people to accept the fact that that is along the lines of suicidal thought. Okay, I'm not necessarily saying, hey, I'm going to go jump off a bridge. I'm going to go,
Mhm.
whatever. I don't want to describe it, but I want to normalize the fact that it's normal to have those thoughts. Okay, we don't want to keep having those thoughts, but hey, it's normal if you have that kind of thought. You're
Mhm.
not a freak. You're not a
Yeah.
crazy person.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not the end of the road.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
but let's at least start there. Do you think it's more common than most people realize to have that kind of thought? Because we don't talk about it. So I think what happens is most people have these thoughts to themselves. They think they're broken,
Yeah.
and then it's this downward spiral because most people don't share that. Right. So
Right.
is it more
Right.
common than most people think?
Of course it is. So here's the problem. Doctors, organization, society, what they're trying to do is eliminate an emotion. Actually, two emotions they focus on: depression and anxiety. I guess they're the best monetization, you know? Um, they don't concentrate on any other emotions, not anger, envy, happiness, nothing. It's always depression, anxiety. That's all you hear about. Why is that? That's weird.
Hmm.
I don't know how old you are. I'm turning 50 in a couple of days. And I don't know when depression became abnormal. Oh, you lost your dad? You should be depressed. I don't. I'm not getting what you're saying. Oh, you're about to go
Right.
on stage, but you're afraid you might mess up. Yeah, you're gonna get anxious. I don't. So what do you? I don't understand what I don't gonna get it. I don't get it because that's the
Yeah.
result. But what's causing it,
Well,
right?
we've gotten into a culture that looks at stopping the pain instead of healing the problem.
Yeah, the cause. They're
Right.
remedying the result, because if I block all the things that causing that, as far as like the chemical imbalance they talk about, which by the way, chemical imbalance is not the cause, that's also the result, right? People always mention like, yeah, but every depressed person has this chemical imbalance. Like, it, yeah, the depressed, because they're depressed, obviously the chemical imbalance is going to go the other way. They're not going to have the dopamine and all these the good stuff. But talk about happy and this, not test them, not test them.
Right.
I want to see what happens. um, so again, it's because we're being taught all the wrong things. Some things are so subtle that seems like the correct thing to do. Like, Jim, you have to live in the present. That's how you become happy, dude. Try that. Try that for a whole year. Just keep living every day present. Let me see if you go broke. Let me see if you get depressed. Let me see if you actually go the way you want to by only looking at the present every day. That's not going to work. That's like trying to head somewhere and only looking down. I bet you're not going to hit your target, guaranteed. But if I look up at the target and I start walking towards it, I know I'm going to hit it because I'm looking up where I'm going, right? So when people get lost, I always use this analogy. Like, what do you do when you get lost in a car? Because that's a typical thing they say when they don't know what to do with themselves. Like, everything sucks and everything this. I don't know what to do. So I'm lost. Okay. My first question, Jim, where the hell are you going?
Hmm.
So you
I
don't
think
know.
another good part there too, like let's go on that analogy for a second. most people would stop the car for a second, right? You slow down a little bit,
That's
you
right.
ask for help.
That's
But
right.
most people don't do that. They're going to keep driving in the wrong direction and hope that they eventually figure it out, where they're
That's
just
right.
burying themselves
So
further and
this
further.
is this is why I discuss this, because I'm trying to shift your listeners' perspectives. When you're driving in a car, exactly what Jim said. What you do is pull over or figure out. You typically will say like, "Oh, look at my GPS." Okay, that's great, but there should be a destination on there, right? You don't, or else it's
Yeah.
just
Well, I
a
think
map.
let's hammer this point home too, which is really important. A good part of the GPS, not just the destination, but where are you now? So
Yeah,
most people
actually,
skip
the
that
the
step.
where are you now doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter. Where you're going is more important. Where you are today, does it matter where you want to take your podcast because of where you are today? Doesn't matter.
Well,
Where are you trying to go is
no.
more important.
So while I agree with that, I think it's also important to understand, just to get a good look at where are you currently, just an honest assessment of yourself,
Right.
right? Just to be honest with, hey, where am I at right now? Not necessarily am I stuck here,
Hmm.
but if I can't be honest with myself in my present moment and just assess like, hey, this is what I'm feeling,
Yeah.
and share that and accept it, I can't get from A to B if I don't know where I'm starting from. Right. So it's really,
Yeah.
to me,
Okay.
about
So
being
that
honest
that
with
part makes
yourself.
sense. So basically, on the map, if you don't know where you are on the map, doesn't matter where the
Right.
destination is, which makes sense. And so for people, when you do find out your destination because you took the time to go down, and if you don't have a phone because it ran out of battery, you call out for help, like Jim said. Metaphorically, that means talking to friends, family, mentors to guide you to where you're trying to go. So this whole idea of living in the present doesn't really work. So what you do is you actually use the future to guide you, the past to learn from, and the present gives you the opportunity to execute. Every day becomes the past, right? I'm hoping you learn every freaking day. And what you're trying to do is be a future version of you that you want to be. But if you can't see that, you're not going to know which turn. So, as far as the metaphoric example we were talking about, when you're driving, um, you know, once you find out where to go, then you realize, like, ah, man, I took the wrong turn 5 years ago. Oh, man. But guess what? At least now you know how to get there. It may take a little bit longer. And guess what? As you're going, you're still going to go through traffic. You're going to see accidents. You're going to have the wrong turns. You're going to have blocked roads, things like that. Same thing in life. Those obstacles are going to happen, whether you like it or not. But if you know your destination, but more importantly, if you have a purpose or why you're going there, that's what gives you that perseverance. And a lot of people don't know how purpose works, or people say it's important. They know that. The problem is, again, we're being taught the wrong things. Jim, you have to find your purpose. So how do you find it? You just keep looking around, and that's the problem, right? What's actually happening is that you have to create your purpose, just like a startup, right? You don't just have a startup and go like, I need to find a purpose for this. Like, no, dude, you have to create the purpose for it. Like, why'd you build it? Why are you building it? And that's why people resonate with mission-driven brands. And that's why a mission is very similar to a personal purpose. For example, Facebook's um, uh, mission was to help connect people, right? When does that end? It's impossible to end, because when does that stop? Where I can keep people connected. Same thing with Airbnb. It's to help people belong. That's why you have experiences now. What does that have to do with rental spaces? So again, purpose. The main two main characteristics that I've learned is that, number one, again, it has to be a verb. Must be a verb. It can't be a noun. You can't say I want to be the biggest podcast. That's not going to work, Jim. Number two, your purpose has to provide value and benefit other people, not yourself. Jim, don't start this podcast because you want to be richer and be able to get the car that you really want. But your focus should be like, well, my conversations with different guests, I'm hoping inspires people to change their life for the better and improve them. When does that end?
Yeah.
And guess what? Does it matter if there's one listener right now or 50,000? Are you still being fulfilled? Are you fulfilling your purpose? Hell yeah. But when you have these goals, which is very different, when you have all these things the way you're being taught, well then it doesn't really matter, because when you think it's a noun, when you think it's a noun, like, oh, I want to have the biggest podcast. Well, that's very finite. And once you reach that, like, okay, now what? It's kind of like a rock star. If your purpose is like, my purpose is to be a rock star. Okay, you're a rock star. And that's why they end up being suicidal, because they lost their sense of purpose, because there wasn't a purpose in the first place. You achieved your goal. You achieve your goal. People should, rather than making goals, I believe you should be making milestones instead, just like a startup would. Investors don't care where you're at, but if they're seeing traction, dude, because they can predict, because of your consistency, right? The being proactive, right? I know where you're going to end up in 5 years, because, like, whoa.
Right.
So,
Yeah, which is all a great point. I want to rewind a little bit because we went fairly metaphor heavy there, and I don't want to gloss over this conversation. The
yeah,
person who's listening to this right now, who's in that mindset, right, who's recently had those thoughts, we addressed, hey, it's relatively normal to have that. More people have it than they admit. You're not a crazy person because you had that thought.
right,
I
right, right.
want to talk next step,
Yeah,
right? Because next step, in my opinion, is sharing that thought with someone else and not sitting there by yourself, but like, hey,
mhm,
let's get around someone else, talk that out and figure out, hey, where do I go from here? And not just
yeah,
sit in it by yourself or put the emotion in a box and pretend it never existed. Right.
right,
So
right.
is the next step from your perspective to have that conversation, reach out to a good friend? Like where do you go from there to start seeing some traction?
The very, very first step people need to understand and accept, it's not their situation. It's actually that they're accountable. You have to know that you're accountable for everything that happens to you. So when you're in a bad place and you have a negative perspective on life, you tend to love excuses. We all do. And we hate accountability. It's never your fault when you're in a bad place. But all of a sudden you get in a good place. Oh, I guess everything happens for a reason. You never say that when things are negative. You know, oh, I lost my kid. Jim, everything happens for a reason. Like, no, no, no. Only afterwards, when something's good, then you say that. Okay, don't ever say that beforehand. But anyway, we're being taught the wrong things. One of the things that really could seriously hurt the society is when they started. It's really this coddle culture, I call it, um, because we keep doing things that are to coddle people's feelings, right? And you see a lot of problems happening today because of that. And we told people, you know what? We should start calling depression mental illness. Yeah, it's an illness. It's not their fault. So, because we don't want them to feel bad, like, dude, mental illness. Yeah, but it's mental illness. It has nothing to do with me. It's not my fault. Well, guess what? You just did. Not only did you take away accountability because it's not your fault, Jim, and people get stoked when they get diagnosed depression, like clinical depression. They're like, oh, I got diagnosed with PTSD. Now I know what it is. Awesome. Like it's odd. But anyway, you really have to know that you're accountable. And when we take away accountability from people saying that, Jim, there's nothing you can do about it, I also took away your hope, because I just told you there's nothing you can do about it. And so now you think every time you have a depressive thought, like pulling over and doing this, that's supposed to never happen again. Oh, I thought it again. I must still have depression. Oh, man. How do I get rid of it? I better take that pill again, right? But that's not the case. But we're being told this. So as soon as the, the, when people understand that you're accountable, we act differently. We don't blame. We don't say society sucks and this, and job sucks, and that's why my girlfriend this doesn't love me, or whatever the excuses you have, because we tend to love excuses. But when you say you're accountable, you're not going to act the same way. You're going to change. You're going to go like, man, what am I doing that's making me feel like this? What do I need to change? When you're complaining about your life, you know what you're doing? You're actually setting up a map of what you need to work on. Man, freaking uh, job is always this and that. Well, what do you have to do to be happier in a job? Or should you leave? Like, you have to do all those things. So the reason I keep saying accountability, I'll give you two quick stories for this. So I was talking to a couple with my clothing line, right? And they ended up leaving. Some kid comes up to me. He's like, dude, I really like what you're saying about, that everything starts with a decision, but it's not that easy. And I said, I never said it was easy, but that's where it starts. Yeah, but I'm in rehab now and blah, 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 blah. And I said, Yeah, that doesn't matter. It always starts with a decision. Yeah, but, and I'm like, oh my God, dude. So I go to this kid. I said, hey, stop saying but. It always starts with a decision. Now tell me why you can't do that. And I backed away. This kid is looking in the sky going, yeah, almost said but I told him not to. So he got stuck. And I'm going, what is he doing? I didn't say run a marathon or lose 500 pounds or anything. Just saying start with a decision instantly, right? Still debating it. And I'm going, what's he? Oh, you're looking for through your database of excuses that you would work for other people. You want to tell me that. And he couldn't find one. And so he goes, you're right. You're right. And I said, yeah, you're welcome. Like, I know. So anyway, I told that same story to some lady at a different event. And she kept telling me, no, that it's different for everyone. And I'm like, no, it's the common denominator is you have to make a decision. You have to start with a decision. It's like, no, it's different. And I'm going, that's odd. She got so angry and left. And I was like, why would someone be angry? I didn't say anything crazy. I just said, you really have to start with a decision to get better, right? What I realized was after analyzing it, and I'm going, why would someone be angry? Because as soon as any of your listeners agree with what I just said, that's as soon as you need to get let go of those excuses. But you're afraid to because you want to blame something for your current situation. You're feeling like a loser because of dad. You're doing this because, well, my girlfriend broke up with me and that was the one, and now I'm not going to get there, or whatever the excuses are. And that's a problem because that's why the past is such a great excuse. How do I change your past? There's nothing I could do. Yeah, your dad was bad. But the problem is a verb. It's not your dad. That's a noun. What are you doing? Because that was what, 20 years ago? Yeah, it's not your dad. Trust me, it's not your dad anymore. It's you starting 20 years ago. It was always you 20 years ago. Because again, you weren't being accountable. You were blaming something else that's causing your issues.
Yeah. So let's go on that for a second because I do agree with you. If someone now says, hey, I'm no longer going to place the blame and the fault on this thing that happened 20 years ago, but I'm going to take the accountability, they're shifting all of the weight of that from the other person now onto themselves, right? In theory. So what? Because I think this is where people get stuck is now I'm putting all of this quote unquote weight on myself to have to deal with. And that feels even worse for some people right now that there's all this stuff is on me. It doesn't change anything. It actually gives you more control over the fact that now you can make these decisions because you're no longer putting the control in someone else's hands. You're taking it onto yourself. So I think it's just the thought of, so what? Right? Because I think a lot of people will get stuck in that spot where now they're almost feeling like there's more weight on themselves, and that's what they were trying to avoid the whole time. Right? So how does someone navigate through that?
I'm sure so many people have gone through this where the minute that they made a decision about something, they actually felt better. And that's the beauty of perspective. Your situation doesn't change. You don't all of a sudden win the lottery or your dad becomes a lot nicer to you today. None of those need to happen. So again, it's all about understanding. There's so many different perspectives that you can have. But when you take that accountability and make that decision, the decision is actually the next step. That's why perspective is so important. So my goal on this episode is to shift people's perspectives, because when you shift your perspectives, the decisions will follow. And when you decide, it becomes a different story. This is what I mean. So people that are like, okay, let's say you've accepted that it's your dad or the job sucks. When you decide to leave your job, again, when I said decide, that doesn't mean you're going to leave tomorrow. What I'm saying is once you decide, your mindset completely changes. The job is no longer as annoying. Opportunity starts going into your ear rather than like passing through you. You start putting out your resume. You start doing all these things because solutions do not come before the decision. They come after you've decided. Jim here didn't know about the entire podcast industry for 5 years and studied it before he started the podcast. He probably started off with just a regular freaking computer, started talking and said, I think I need to sound clear. I need a mic. I probably should have a better camera. So I'm going to get a camera. So you evolve along the way. But the decision is what got him here, not because, oh man, I found the solution. If I do this, and this, I can now have a podcast. That's not what happens. Until you decide, nothing happens. So that's the most important thing that people need to understand. That's why accountability is very important. Once you decide, everything shifts. So the problem is like, they don't know what to do. Like you said, like, okay, I got it. And that's why I came up with my own framework that's very similar to how we do things in the startup world. So I call it the evolution cycle framework. I say evolution, not evolution, because I want you to remember the 4 E's. You have to, it's a framework where you start with envision, execute, evaluate, and evolve. The reason I start with envision, again, the metaphor before, if you don't know where you're going, well, how the hell you know how to get there? It's impossible. You need to be always forward thinking. You need to always figure out what's going to happen in the future, learn from the past so you can execute in the present, but you can't execute in the present if you don't know what's guiding you, right? And once you know where you want to be in the future, especially like, for example, Jim has a future version of this podcast that he wants. Now let's reverse engineer it. What are the things you need to go there? Well, I need to get a bunch of speakers, this, that, whatever it is. You all of a sudden figure out the solutions to get there the same way startups do. The next step is execute. In the startup world, the best way to learn is to execute. That's why Facebook says fail fast, because if it's impossible to fail, it is impossible to learn. So the best way is to execute on things. Everything Jim and I are telling you, assumptions. We don't know what's going to work for you. We have no idea. They're just assumptions. I'm hoping I shift your perspectives in some ways, but they're all just assumptions. I hope it works for you. The only time I get becomes not an assumption is when I get feedback or data, right? So execution is the best way. So for people that are listening, that are depressed, that are thinking this, well, what are you doing about it? What are you doing about it? Let's look at your week. Let's look at your month. Let's look at your year. What are you doing about it? So people that are depressed, are you even visualizing yourself as a happy person, or are you living in the present and just waiting to be happy without doing anything about it and trying to get rid of this emotion, right? So that's why execution is very important. I don't know what it's going to be. Is it yoga? Is it going to a therapist? I don't know. I don't know. The next step is evaluate, because, before you execute, I'm sorry. In the execute phase, in the startup world, we have this thing called an MVP, minimum viable product. That means like, what can I build today, the most minimum version that I can get out there and get feedback and data so that I can know that I'm doing the right thing. Instead of spending 5 million, spend $1,000, right? That's what startups do now. We should be doing the same thing. I call them minimum viable behavior. So your MVBs, what's the minimum thing that you can do is like a 5-minute walk. And then later on, if it makes you feel better, let's make that 10 minutes. And then you start seeing the feedback or data from that. And that's where the evaluation stage comes in. You evaluate, well, how did that go? We don't know. Let's look at the feedback and we'll look at the data. Are you sleeping more? Do you feel less irritable? You feel happier? And that's the hard part about the evaluation stage is that you have to be really freaking honest with yourself. That's tough. It's tough. So sometimes it's good to ask other people, like, how have I been? Am I better? Like, or people will say something to you like, hey, you seem happier today, dude. That's awesome. And then you evolve. The evolution stage basically is where you become closer to that future version of you that you want to be, right? You're always constantly changing, always. But because your perspective is always shifting. But anyway, the evolution stage is where you either pivot or persevere. In the startup world, when you don't adapt, you die. I don't know how old you are. I don't know if you know what America Online is, but they're gone. And I thought they were going to rule the world because I'm like, oh my God. They didn't adapt quick enough. They didn't look at what was happening. So they die. A lot of these companies without a mission that are not mission driven, they die because there's nothing that they don't have a future version that they're following, right? Because they want it to be this product. Yeah, but things evolve. That product sucks now. We have AI. So it's like, ooh, now you're stuck, aren't you? Because you don't have a mission. That sucks. Um, anyway, that's where the evolve stage comes in. That's where you decide: do you pivot? Is it working for you, or do you tweak it, or do you try something else? Did it work? Oh, that's a better news. But you don't just keep doing the same thing. Let's see how we can make that even better. So walking was good. Let's see if running will help too. It's not that, then pivot. Let's do hiking instead. Maybe you need to be surfing. I don't know. No one will ever know. And that's why all these frameworks, all these books, yeah, go for it. I don't know what's going to work. But guess what? The best way I know how it's not going to work is you keep doing what the hell you're doing now, right? If you keep doing everything you're doing now, you're going to keep getting everything you're getting now. So until you change, something has to change, right? For anything to change. So and it's a constant cycle. It's not you feel better like it's like again, I love using metaphors so people can understand better. When you're in shape, you're not permanently in shape, guys. People that you see that are jacked up and all this, they don't just happen to be looking like that. That's a constant proactive effort every day. It is not something you they just stop and like, oh, dude, I can eat cake. I can eat anything I want, and I never gain weight anymore. It's like that's impossible. You got to consider your mental health too. What's your brain, your mind eating? What type of content? What perspectives are you having? Guess what? That's gonna bring you closer and closer to suicidal tendencies because it's all one cause. People try to categorize it like, oh, this one's an alcoholic. Oh, this one's on drugs. This one is something else and something else and something else. It all starts with complaining on Monday, and then all of a sudden it just kind of keeps on going. But typically there's a cause there. And a lot of times it's really your perspective. Your life isn't crap. Your perspective on your life is, right? And that's when I really, look at it. Everyone that committed suicide, it's always like, why the hell did you do that? It wasn't even that bad. It wasn't even that bad, right? But they couldn't see a future version of themselves. They focused on the past, right? And that's what happens. It's so difficult for some people to change the blueprint of their life. A best way to explain that is breakups. You were so focused of the future with this person that you can't unsee a different version. And until you see that different version, I mean, you see this in romantic comedies all day. They try to go for this girl, even though this girl is right here, awesome as hell, got your support, and then all of a sudden, ah, I see a future with this. This one's gone, disappears, gone. All of a sudden, it's not a problem. What happened? What happened? Nothing happened. No magic pill, guys. Perspective shifted and said, oh, I can be happy after all. Oh, I see a different future now. I can see with this person. Yeah. White picket fence and some kids and a dog? Definitely with this person. Until you get that, it's very difficult. And that's why it's very important. Like you have to have these that's why it all works together. The future, the past, you're trying to learn. What people say is like, you got to change the way you see the past and all that stuff. But I think it more importantly, I mean, that's obviously very, very helpful too. But a lot of people are not focusing enough on trying to be a different version of themselves. They get stuck with this identity. They think this is the final result. Like this is the end of the book. Like, yeah, but you're still here. There's a lot of things that makes people suicidal. Again, it's that belief that we're not supposed to be depressed. Doesn't make any sense. Jim, have you ever played video games or sports or anything?
Sure.
Does the level of difficulty increase as you play the games or
Always.
sports? Right. So
Yeah,
why do you
always.
play it if it's harder? Like, why do you play it?
You get better.
You get better, but okay, but it gets harder again though. So why do you keep playing it, right? It's actually necessary because in life people think it's supposed to be easy. If I give Jim a game that he can beat in one day, That's kind of saying like he's gonna be stoked about it. Like, oh, I am the man. I just beat that in one day. I'm the man. Well, what happens tomorrow now? How do you feel, Jim? Feel great? You beat it. Should be awesome every day, right? You killed it. What happened? How come you don't feel it? What happened? Because you're not fulfilled. People are always in pursuit of happiness, but people don't realize happiness, depression, anxiety, all these emotions are temporary. They're just temporary emotional responses to your perspectives. Keyword is response, right? What is it responding to? That's what you need to change. So in my thing with games and stuff, the level of difficulty always increases. Those are the ones you want to play. Well, put that in your own life as well. The more difficulties you actually have, when you even talk to people, when they have these crazy stories and they're still there in front of you, you're just like, dude, holy crap, man. That's awesome. Not because they're a billionaire, but you're just like, you're still going for it. Wow. Like, you're amazing. Like, you're amazing. Compared to some kid that's been a gazillionaire since he was a little kid. Is that it? Inspiring? And they still get um, messed up, right? So people need to understand that it's actually a requirement for fulfillment. People that do the marathon, you think it's awesome practicing for that? You think it's a great time? It's just fulfilling. So stop looking for happiness, look for fulfillment. Because when people say, like, find the job you love, like, you think you're supposed to be happy every day at your job, but that's not what makes it fulfilling. That's not it. So when things you go through these obstacles, that's actually what makes your life more interesting. It's not about what's the meaning of life, it's what makes your life meaningful. And these things will come. And when you do the evolution cycle framework, that's how you determine like which route you are. But again, you have to figure out, what are you envisioning? What version of you are you trying to say? I'm hoping it's a happy version. So people always think when you live in the present that you're not going to enjoy and stop and smell the flowers. I'm like, well, if the future version of you is happy, I'm pretty sure the future version of you will tell you, like, Jim, chill out today, smell the freaking flowers automatically. Like, that's the goal. Is not what people think. Like, when you think about the future, that means work hard, play hard. No, actually, just work hard, work hard, work hard. We'll play later. Like, no, that's bad. And the whole living the present thing, that's bad. Just all these things that we were telling people is hurting people, and we don't realize it. Some are meant well. Obviously, the doctors are not trying to mess you up, but I hear so many stories of people going to doctors, and it's like, oh, you need this pill. They didn't even talk about anything like what caused it or what they may be going through. And even that, there's studies that show that they had like therapists and fake therapists, and they were as effective because they were empathetic and all these things that allows to almost like love basically, right? When you have that, it actually makes it easier. Like when Jim said, reach out to someone, talk to someone, this, that. That's reciprocated, you actually feel better. So it's not even about the therapist, because when people, again, it's about accountability. No one is fixing you. Hopefully they guide you, but you can only fix yourself. There's no one that's going in your brain. Like, you're the only one in there. So, and that's what we really need again, it's like once you realize you're accountable and you need to do the first. So these are all things I'm hoping people shift their perspective to realize, like, oh, like I've talked to people, for example, someone had anxiety, and he's like, I take pills. Kind of like challenge, right? And I'm like, okay, what makes you anxious, dude? He said, when I'm driving a car. I said, there's a lot of people here. We all have cars, and that's how we got here. What makes you anxious, dude? So he goes, when I'm in a car, I think I'm going to hurt myself and probably hurt other people. And I said, oh, well, at least we're getting somewhere. Let me get this straight, Jim. When you get in a car, you think you're going to hurt yourself and you might hurt other people. Yeah, that'll cause anyone to be anxious. And now you have anxiety. You don't have anxiety. That's why you're anxious. Like, I hope you know that. And so he was like, you're right. And I'm like, yeah, no, you're welcome. So these things that we're being taught, that's what's actually hurting us. This whole mental illness, that's what's hurting us. The taking away the accountability, that's hurting us. Turning the result as the cause, that's hurting us. Like we need to really focus on what we need to, like the proactive aspect of things. And for people that are looking at me like, the hell's Ricardo's credentials anyway? This dude doesn't have a PhD. Yeah, and I'm also not a dentist, but I'm going to tell my kids to brush their teeth every day to prevent cavities. I'm not a nutritionist, but on Halloween, I'm going to make sure they don't eat all that candy because I know they might get diabetes if they keep eating sugar. So I'm going to give them some good food and good diet so they don't get, um, unhealthy. I'm not a fitness instructor, but I'm pretty much going to recommend like you might want to go to the gym or work out, do something. Like I'm none of those. I think I'm allowed to say all those things because everything I focus on is prevention, not reaction. Once you're depressed and you're suicidal, you're already suicidal, dude. No one, you didn't get to prevent it because you didn't hear me 5 years ago. Like you're hearing me now. I'm hoping I'm helping prevent. But again, it's a constant shift in your perspectives. Trauma shifts negative, inspiration shifts positive. So you need to always expose yourself to inspiration. There's a difference in inspiration and motivation. Um, Motivation comes after a decision. There's no way I can motivate Jim to go out after breaking up with his girlfriend until I shifted his perspective. The way to shift his perspective is through inspiration. That's the difference. Inspiration is not direct, it's not forced. Motivation is, come on, one more push up, Jim. Come on, let's walk. Dude, let's go out tonight. That's motivation. Inspiration is more like if you broke up with your girlfriend, like it's actually questions is the best way. It's like, oh man, you've been staying in your room a lot. Is that helping you? Like, doesn't that kind of make you worse, get more depressed because you're by yourself? Would going for a walk help you? That's kind of more inspirational because you're shifting their perspectives in some way, shape, or form. Some people say when they're someone passed away, and they try to shift their perspective by saying, he's looking down on you right now. What would you think he wanted you or she wanted you to do today? And all of a sudden it's like, whoa, shifted perspective. It's no longer life sucks, I lost them. It's, whoa, nothing changed. Situation's exactly the same. But all of a sudden they act differently. So all of a sudden, now you can motivate that person. Now you can go, all right, cool. Now that you've made the decision, now I can really motivate you. When you motivate too early, that's going to be a problem. If Jim just broke up with someone and I said, let's go out, he's not going to want to do it. He's going to get really angry at me. And because I'm going to be annoying to him. He's going to be like, dude, this guy, shut up. Like, I don't want to go out, So anyway, I can keep on going there. I'm sorry if I kind of.
Yeah, no problem at all. And I know we're actually kind of closing in on the end of the show here. So I do want to ask one final question of you. If you had just one sentence, one bit of advice to give to someone today to kind of help them have that better day, the advice that they need to hear, what would that sentence be?
You have to say fuck it more. So to live life without regret and then accept challenges worth the risk. That's what you need to do.
All right. I love it. Well, again, thank you tremendously, not only for this conversation, but for the work that you do. It's truly impactful. So again, I just want to thank you for your time and for your attention, your energy. It's all quite appreciated. And I know a difference will be made. So
Thank you so much. Again. Thanks so much for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Hey, before you go, can I pray for you real quick? Dear Heavenly Father, I want to pray for the person listening to this right now. I want to thank them for the time that they're spending right now listening to this episode. I want to thank them for the health that they have, for the opportunity that they have right now in this life to listen to this, where I'm sitting down with a good friend of mine, Ricardo, and we are sharing the good news that this person listening right now is worthy, that they are enough. Father, I want to ask that you remind them today that you have a plan for their life, and that there is purpose in there, and that even if they can't see it right now, that they understand that there is a purpose placed in their life, that there is a gift placed within inside of them that is worth a tremendous amount, not just to the world, but to you and to them. And I ask that you help them to just see that gift and to help them remain grounded in their life, to help them see that even though things may sometimes feel squirrely, may sometimes feel out of alignment with what they want, that there is a plan for their lives and that all things do work together for good. So I ask that the person listening to this right now, that you take the weight off of their shoulders and help them to just understand they are worthy, they are enough, and that there is a purpose and that they need to keep going because, again, that they are worth it. We ask these things in your name. Love you.